The penthouse tower turbo of Manhattan like a jewel. Each in the framing the cheetah's glittering chas as if it were a living painting. Eleanor Whitman stood near the bar. Her posture impeccable, her emerald gown sculpted to perfection, catching the warm light of crystal chandeliers. Each was that light that rose the room. Each handshake that carried unspoken calculations, felt like a chess move Eleanor had already anticipated. The charity gala wasn't just a night out. It was first stage, her declaration of success after 5 relentless years climbing the corporate ladder. Every step, every word, every smile had been meticulously honed to broadcast one message. Eleanor Whitman belonged there at the top. Clusters of executives swirled round her, campaign flutes in hand, their conversation carefully measured. The chatter was polished, rehearsed, punctuated with laughter that existed only to lubricate the exchange of influence. Servers moved silently between them, invisible yet indispensably, balancing trays like acrobats, each glass of bubbly a symbol of fleeting indulgence in a world that valued appearances over essence. Eleanor's emerald eyes scanned the room, noting connections forming and dissolving in microseconds. She smiled, but her mind was elsewhere calibrating, judging, plotting. Tonight was about more than charity. IT was about visibility. She had made herself the center of the room, drawing 3 senior vice presidents from rival firms into a conversation about mergers and acquisitions. Every carefully timed story, every that hit just the right its bill, was designed to signal her dominance, her competence. She was bold. She was expensive. She was impossible to ignore. And then he arrived there. The room didn't shift, not immediately, but Eleanor felt the difference before anyone else did. Nathan Carlyle entered with quiet precision. There were no flashy watches, no designer labels that screamed for attention, just a navy suit that whispered restraint and confidence. Ichia's footsteps were deliberate, soft on the polished flowers. Ichia's smell subtle, not the kind that demanded notice but one that lingered in memory. There was a calmness about him, an awareness of Ichia's surroundings that was almost clinical, yet somehow infinitely human. She moved as if he belonged in our and everywhere all at once observing corrected temperatures repeating. An enigma wrapped in subtle elegance. Eleanor's voice carried across the polished room before Nathan had even reached her side. "There you are," she called, a tone that blended warmth and authority, affection and subtle condition on the signature blend she had perfected over years of calculated social navigation. She beckoned him closer, slipping her arm through edges as if to claim both him and the attention of the crowd. "Everyone, this is Nathan," she said, her words punctuated with the practiced issue of someone who had rehearsed introductions 8,000 times. "Nathan Carlyle. Am I boyfriend?" The emphasis on boyfriend was casual, almost teasing, but Eleanor knew exactly how the words would land. They landed like stuns in still water. Conversations fractured mid-sentence. A campaign flute paused halfway to lips. Heads turned. Subtle mere stickled the edges of the gathering. Not Hans' expression, however, remained clear and past, which his lips carried the inches of a inches smile, corners tilting in amusement, perhaps resignation. Eleanor searched each essays briefly, seeking acknowledgment of her brilliance in orchestrating the moment. Instead, she found only a calm that unsettled her, a chord that amplified the noise of the room round them. "Something like that," he murmured softly, a phrase so understated it was almost swallowed by the ambient chatter, yet I carried weight in its stillness. Eleanor tightened her arm round Uchi's. "Is exploring different things," she continued, performing her role flawlessly. "Consulting, freelancing, very entrepreneurial spirit. Still figuring out where he fits. Not everyone can be a corporate shark like us, right?" Hurley was light, teasing, but the underlying superiority was unmistakable. The words, "tau casual," drew attention. Harrison Shaw, a VP from Meridian Capital, shifted uncomfortably in his seat nearby, which his curiosity piqued. He had been ready to speak, but Eleanor's declaration froze the moment in place, bending the social dynamics to her will. Not Hans was caught through her narrative without accretion. "If you excuse me," he said quietly, which his cadence mirrored, leaving no room for rebuttal or dramatics. "I should make a phone call." Without haste, without a flinch, he withdrew his arm from Eleanor's grasp and moved towards the heat. Each step was deliberate, controlled, a quiet assertion of autonomy. No drama, no confrontation, just a man living a synonymous on terms. Eleanor watched, a flicker of her kruising voor carefully past features. Haar from was brief. Schragged reviews the practice attachment of a woman accustomed to regaining control of any room. She pivoted back to her captivated audience. Where were we? She asked. Her tone seamless, as if not Hans' departure had been planned, anticipated. But she knew it and the room had noticed. Phone subtly checked. As exchanged there. Conversations paused in curiosity and speculation. A crack had formed in the carefully constructed architecture of the gala. She unbuilt the crack had been revealed behind not Hans' mere presence, and its absence only amplified its significance. Behind Monday morning, the weight of unfinished business had settled over inner legs in the fog of Manhattan streets at dawn. She sat in the gleaming conference room, Wout Kaufi cooling beside her, facing the leadership of Whitman and Persant Caldwell Enterprises. Margaret Caldwell, CEO, her silver hair pulled back in a savory knot, studied Eleanor with a gaze that could both measure and judge. Lucas Manning, CFO, and Henry Lawson, VP of Operations, were already in position, professional, precise, their focus on the details that would determine the fate of a major acquisition. Sterling Partners. Let's surgery the elephant in the room, Margaret said, her voice combatant forgiving. The Sterling deal. Where do we stand? Eleanor swallowed, hands tightening round her coffee cup. This was meant to be her triumph. Years of careful maneuvering had led to this sure point of contact, the one deal that would remain her reputation, her influence. But the Raom's attention, and Margaret's particular scrutiny, immediately threatened to unearth her vulnerability. Still waiting on confirmation from the primary investor, Lucas replied, "We told that the acquisition collapses. You've been trying to reach term for 3 weeks. Eleanor's mind raced, scanning the threads of every email, every intermediary conversation. She had done everything right, or so she had believed there. She had assumed control, had built a narrative, had prepared her stage. And yet, the outcome was uncertain, teetering on the edge of factors she could neither influence nor predict. You've sent multiple messages. She did, was steadier than she felt. The intermediaries assured that the investor will respond when ready. Do we ever know who this person is?" Henry asked sharply, frustration flickering across his overly-stacked voice. Eleanor braced herself. The truth was almost laughably simple. She had assumed the investor's profit didn't matter, that the wealth, the terms, and the credentials were enough. But she unconsidered presence, personality, or discretion qualities that, she would soon realize, mattered infinitely more than she could have anticipated. Margaret's phone buzzed. 10 luchas. 10 triotas simultaneously. Screens flickered, new stickers scrolled, analysts paquet. The names that would undo her assumptions, reveal oversights, and dignity whispers through Manhattan's financial corridors, appeared in stark clarity. Nathaniel Carlyle, founder of Carlyle Capital, architect of Barron's in deals, ghost in the investment world, yet undeniably omnipotent in impacts. Eleanor's coffee cup tipped from her fingers, unnoticed, a silent testament to the shock that had finally arrived there. The Raom's carefully measured air, the authority she had recommended, and the social power she wielded like armor, all shifted in a heartbeat. She had misjudged him, completely, and she had done it publicly, in front of the people whose perception mattered most. Monday morning arrived like a cold slab, the kind that foresees consciousness before Kefir has even had a chance to work its magic. Eleanor Whitman sat at the head of the polished mahogany conference table, the remnants of a fart, now lukewarm, coffee perched beside her. Her mind wasn't on the bitter liquidity, was still on Nathan Carlyle, the quiet, unassuming man who had, with a few understated steps, dismantled the narrative she had spent years carefully crafting. The conference room of Whitman and Persant Caldwell Enterprises felt smaller than it should have. Margaret Caldwell, CEO, sat opposite Eleanor, her posture impeccable, a living embodiment of authority. Lucas Manning, the CFO, scrolled furiously through a chest bleed, while Henry Lawson, VP of Operations, leaned back in his chair, hands stippled, trying to anticipate the storm before it hit. There was een onbekend understanding man zera onze currents. Something had shifted, and there was with curiosity, judgment, and impending revelation. Margaret was caught through the tension. Let's surgery the elephant in the room, she said evenly. The sterling partners acquisition. Where do we stand? Eleanor inhaled sharply. This was said to be her triumph, the pinnacle of her meticulously curated career. She had spent months orchestrating meetings, vetting intermediaries, building the illusion of control. Yet control, she quickly realized, was an illusion. Yet waiting on confirmation from the primary investor, she began. Her voice was steady, but inside, a storm was brewing. Without that commitment, the acquisition cannot proceed. You have been attempting contact for 3 weeks to. In Rusbrouwer Ferrauert. Do we ever know who this investor is? The question struck Eleanor like a hammer. She swallowed, searching for words. She knew the intermediaries were impeccable, the credentials flawless. But who had neither and Charles's kind of influence? Who had the gravitas to move barons while remaining invisible? And more importantly, how had she failed to see it? Before Eleanor could answer, the Raom's collective focus shifted. Margaret's phone buzzed first, 10 luchas. Notifications arrived simultaneously, soft chimes multiplying into a wave of significance. Irresistibly flickered as he appended the latest news feed. The all-mounted screen in the conference room lit up, the muted chitter of analysts spilling into the room with a sense of urgency. Eleanor felt her pulse quicken. The financial anchor's voice broke the tense silence. Confirmation has emerged that the mysterious investor behind Sterling Partners is anti-pensionist none other than Nathaniel Carlyle, the 34-year-old founder of Carlyle Capital. Despite maintaining an almost invisible public profile, Carlyle has orchestrated 7 major acquisitions in the past 2 years alone, quietly shaping markets and influencing billions of dollars in capital float. Eleanor's coffee cup fell from her fingers, splashing across the polished surface of the conference table. Heat rose to her cheeks, and for the first time in years, she felt the unsettling tremor of panic. She ain't misjudged Nathan Carlyle. In small measure she had underestimated the magnitude of his influence entirely, and she had done so publicly, in front of everyone at the gala, with the grace of someone who believed that she was performing an innocent introduction. The truth, it seemed, was far more devastating. Margaret's expression remained unreadable, though Eleanor could sense the flicker of barely contained judgment. Nathan Carlyle, Margaret repeated slowly, her silver eyes scanning Eleanor as if searching for traces of understanding. Does that name sound familiar to you? Eleanor's hands tightened into fists beneath the table. You've been seeing each other for 8 months, she admitted, voice almost strangled. The words felt absurdly inadequate against the backdrop of her error. I didn't. He never said to. The room erupted into whispers, soft yet palpable, as colleagues began connecting data that Eleanor had failed to consider. Luca stepped rapidly on each to bleed, pulling up images from the charity gala. Eleanor, radiant in her emerald dress, her arm linked with Nathan Charles's simple navy suite. Security footage, social media pass, even a tip from Gideon Shaw, a VP at Meridian Capital, all corroborated the public narrative Eleanor had created. And yet, the truth was devastatingly simple. She had reduced a man who had quietly orchestrated barons to the status of still figuring out in front of an audience that mattered. Eleanor's mind raced, replaying the moments in slow motion. The faint smell Nathan had worn, the imprecision with which he had excused himself, the absence of protest or confrontation all of which now revealed a quiet power she had not only failed to recognize but had inadvertently undermined. She had assumed ignorance, invisibility, and meekness where there had been strategy, intelligence, and immense capability. And she broadcast that assumption with the confidence of someone who had never been around in the public eye. Until now, Henry leaned forward, voice but least with incredulity. I saw him briefly, leaving the gala. Very quiet, seemed ordinary, nothing to suggest this level of influence touched. There are omstensi on Tikineda. And yet, barons. Vichia's question hung, rhetorical yet accusatory, an unspoken indictment of Eleanor's assumptions. Eleanor pressed her palms against her temples, trying to steady her racing thoughts. The gala, the carefully orchestrated introductions, the left, Ze appel also of a 10.000 te crew per die of competence. Ze geperformed in a theater worship believe dat ze was de director, yet niet een Carla geben ze onzin architect, en ze, anuitingly, ze kamik relief. Margaret ston kot true Eleanor spiralink reflections. Eleanor, did you no niet een Carla before the gala? Horkoern was klinikru, precise, leaving no room for evasion. Every in the room trekt Eleanor's response. The silent pressure amplifying the weight of the misjudgment. The unspoken understanding was brutal. Reputations, influence, and trust were fragile. One misstep, one public misjudgment, and the consequences could be swift and irreversible. Eleanor's voice was barely audible. Yes, you were being seeing each other. But I didn't. He never maintained his work. He preferred to stay private. He changed the subject when I asked about professional matches. I erased. The word felt like a dagger in firm word, heavy with the weight of arrogance and oversight. I erased, and I broadcast my assumption. Lucia's fingers hovered over the tablet, images of the gala frozen in time, each snapshot a testament to Eleanor's public miscalculation. The room's atmosphere shifted subtly. The undercurrent of judgment now changed the incredulity. Whispers began circulating quoted in her heterosumed. What she presented, how she had misrepresented a man whose discretion and power dwarfed her own. The whispers were silent yet deafening, echoing through every corner of the conference room and beyond, paced to reach the wider networks of Manhattan's financial world. Margaret's voice obtained slightly, a precision of tone that was almost surgical. Eleanor, Nathan Carlyle apparatus on trust, discretion, and substance of respect their crew. Everything you did at the gala, in front of an audience, violated the very principles he lives by. You turned someone of immense capability into a narrative device, a supporting character in a story you had outward concerned. The words landed with the weight of a gavel, each one forcing Eleanor to confront the magnitude of her misjudgment. She believed that the gala was a stage for her to shine, but in reality, it had become a mirror reflecting her own blind spots, her assumptions, and her ambition unchecked by curiosity or empathy. She had treated Nathan Carlyle as a character to be judged by her standards, rather than a person whose depth and discipline demanded recognition. And now the consequences were manifesting in the quiet, devastating way that only real power can deliver. Eleanor leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling, replaying Nathan's subtle gestures, which is quite dignity, and the grace with which he had navigated a room that he assumed he was subordinate, unremarkable, dispassable. She had controlled the narrative without uttering a word, teaching a lesson in a rude feel in every corridor, every whispered conversation, and every professional exchange that followed. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur. Numbers, projections, contingencies so of it secondary to the rudeness that Eleanor's public misjudgment had not gone unnoticed. Sterling partner futuri, that used on success, and her on professional credibility, now hinged not on her expertise, but on her capacity to understand the human element she had so curiously overlooked. As she left the conference room, Eleanor's steps felt heavier than usual, each in the marble hallway a reminder of the invisible power she had failed to recognize. Nathan Carlyle had shown her, without confrontation or spectacle, that influence need not be allowed to be absolute, that true authority often resides in the quietest prisons, and that her assumptions when your intention at once can have consequences far beyond intention. The city outside continued its relentless pace, indifferent to Eleanor's turmoil, glittering and churning, just as it had been during the gala. But Eleanor's perspective had shifted. She understood, painfully and indelibly, that the words without she recommended could be reshaped before she neither soon nor controlled. Nathan Carlyle was that force, invisible, patent, unseen, and she had underestimated him entirely. The week that followed unrevealed Eleanor 8 months' life not with explosions, but with a grinding inevitability that felt far crueler. There were no dramatic confrontations in hallways, no raised voices or public reprimands. Instead, there was something worse, the quiet consensus of judgment, the kind that didn't need to be spoken aloud because everyone already understood it. By Tuesday morning, Eleanor realized that she could no longer move through New York unnoticed. At a Starbucks 2 blocks from her apartment, she stood in line, sunglasses pierced on her as the speech of the overcast sky. She told herself att det var ridiculous att fylla på sätt in i sitt av 8 million people. Jedze sensation klonk te förskin. Begin hor, tu journalist from a rival firms pakein hostan zet i rent nearly hosten auf. Did you hear about the Whitman thing? Eleanor's shoulders stiffened. I know. I almost didn't believe it. Calling him, still figuring things out? Turns out he's been quietly moving heavy bearing in dealsty. That's what happens when you confuse confidence with insight. Eleanor paid for her coffee without turning around. The barista expression was neutral, but she imagined its ignition flicker behind each face. She imagined everyone knew. In the revision of the glass pastry case, she barely recognized herself perfect hair, tailored coat, controlled posture. All the armor she had built over years of ambition felt suddenly theatrical, like a cashmere one could see through. Back at the office, the atmosphere was worse. Colleagues greeted her with exaggerated politeness. Voices too careful, smiles too quick. Doors closed just a little faster when she walked down the hall. Conversations dipped into silence when she approached, then resumed with artificial brightness on she passed. IT was a corporate equivalent of walking on broken glass, everyone trying not to make things worse, while simultaneously ensuring she felt the full weight of her mistake. Eleanor sat at her desk, book open, watching emails powering that had nothing to do with her. She had once been capped on everything. Now she was the only one unnecessary, consulted when unavoidable. Influence, she was learning, evaporated faster than gigantic. BYONZ, the story had metastasized. Industry newsletters published blind items that were anything but blind. Group chats их плодят with commentary thinly disguised as humor. Someone created a mock LinkedIn post that circulated like wildfire. Passion found. Status updated. No longer figuring Katie out. Investment portfolio robusty. The meme was shared, reshared, and noted with laughing emails and fauchonchernit remarks. Eleanor didn't need to see it to know exactly what IT said. She could feel IT, like a bruise press repeatedly. That afternoon, Margaret Caldwell summoned her. That sales office was immaculate, every surface polished to perfection. Eleanor had once loved this room, it symbolized aspiration, arrival. Now it felt like a courtroom. The Sterling Partners deal is dead. Margaret said without preamble. The word struck Eleanor with physical fires. She gripped the armrest of the chair to steady herself. Dead? She echoed. Completely. Margaret nodded. Carlisle Capital withdrew their interest yesterday. Polite. Professional. Why not? Eleanor's throat tightened. Did they say WHY? Margaret's expression hardened. They said Mayor Carlisle has decided to pursue other opportunities to corporate language. Sanity Z. Bloodless. And unofficially. Eleanor asked, Tausha already knew the answer. Margaret leaned back. Unofficially, Eleanor, you embarrass him publicly. You demonstrated precisely the kind of behavior he writes. WHY would he trust us with bands when our own leadership treats people as props? I didn't know, Eleanor whispered. He never told me what he did. Here I did the subject. I thought. You were assumed, Margaret caught in. And their assumptions are dangerous, especially when here broadcast to a room full of people who trade in perception too. Eleanor stared at the flower. The memory of the gallery played again and again. Horley, Horton, the Carell's confidence with which he diminished someone who had never asked for approval. You turned your relationship into a performance. Margaret continued. Without his consent, without curiosity. You made him a symbol of what you were into. The words stung because they were true. Is there anything I can do? Eleanor asked, desperation bleeding into her voice. Can I reach out? Apologize? You can't do whatever you think is appropriate personally, Margaret replied carefully. But professionally, the board is asking hard questions. This deal was pivotal. Your position is precarious. That evening, Eleanor sat alone in her apartment, the city lights blared beyond the windows. Neat and childless name glowed on her phone screen. She had called twice. Both times IT went to voicemail. She hadn't left a message. What could she possibly say that all in sound hollow? He had texted once. Just once. I hope you had a good rest of your evening. No accusation, no bitterness, just distance. BY Thursday, the humanitarian acquired new layers. At lunch, Eleanor ate alone in her office, scrolling through a financial news she could barely focus on. Her assistant terwijl take contact. Een collega gewoon zou het voor erpenen, nou spake over voor in meetings. IT as een cruci was recalibration. The hierarchy had shifted, and everyone adjusted accordingly. Friday brought the board meeting. The long oak tables seemed to stretch endlessly. Each sheet occupied by faces and her once impressed, persuaded, dominated. Now their expressions were neutral, evaluating. Margaret delivered the update with surgical precision. We towards Sterling Partners, the firm faced stagnation. Expansion into Asian markets was postponed indefinitely. Projections dimmed. Layoffs were quietly discussed. We need alternatives, Isabel Chen, a board member, said crisply. What about the region consortium? Lucas Manning shook his head. Chevy partnered with another firm too. Which firm? Isabel asked. Margaret didn't look at Eleanor when she answered. Carlyle kept tight. The silence that followed was devastating in its restraint. No one needed to say anything. The implication was clear. The opportunity Eleanor had destroyed now flourished elsewhere, under leadership that understood discretion. Every Gazi eventually found Eleanor. She wanted to disappear. Over the weekend, she drafted 7 per hour messages and deleted them all. Each felt wrong to formal, to intimate, to defensive, to self-flagellating. Howard did one apology for failing to see her not a person at all. For Mr. King prohibited for understanding. On Monday, the knock came. Miss Whitman, her assistant said swiftly, через someone from Carlisle Capital downstairs. She's asking to see you too. Eleanor's heart lurched. Nathan? She asked, barely breathing. No, ma'am. A representative. Clara Bennett. Clara Bennett was everything Eleanor had once admitted and feared in equal measure. In her 50s, impeccably dressed, Kamuita would be called. She carried authorities away neatly and did quietly. This is a courtesy seat, Clara said, placing a folder on Eleanor's desk. Not a negotiation to Eleanor nodded, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Emma Carlyle asked me to explain each decision regarding Sterling Partners. Clara continued. IT isn't punitive. He isn't interested in retaliation. He simply concluded that your firm may not align with HE's values. Values. Eleanor repeated hollowly. Discretion. Mutual respect. Substance over spectacle, Clara said. These are not abstract concepts for him. They are how he lives. The message was devastating in its simplicity. Can I speak to him? Eleanor asked. Please. I need to apologize. Clara's expression softened, just slightly. Between you and me, he isn't angry. He was disappointed. And his disappointment is worse too. After Clara left, Eleanor remained at her desk as the afternoon faded into evening. She appeared not had social media profile used for months. The last post was a quote. We judge ourselves by our intentions and others by their actions. Perhaps we should reverse that occasionally. Her hands trembled as she typed. Did you know all along how I saw you? The reply came 20 minutes later. Yes. She stared at the screen. Why didn't you correct me? Another pause. I wanted to see if curiosity about who I actually was would ever hurt to your assumptions. The truth settled heavy in her chest. She had failed not because she lacked intelligence or ambition, but because she had never bothered to look deeper. The facade she had built so carefully had finally collapsed, not under attack, but under the weight of its own emptiness. And for the first time in her career, Eleanor Whitman had nowhere to hide. Time did not soften Eleanor Whitman's vow. IT clarified IT. The days after Clara Bennett's visit passed with a strong, hollow quiet. The sharp edges of humility and elite, replaced by something more unsettling, a certain awareness of laws. Not just of position or reputation, but of certainty. Eleanor had spent her adult life believing she understood how the world worked. Value was visibility. Success was dominance. Respect was something you commanded by standing tall, speaking louder, moving faster. Nathan Carlyle had dismantled that world with it ever raising each's voice. On Tuesday morning, Margaret called Eleanor into her office once again. This time, there were no pleasantries, no strategic framing. The board has reached a decision, Margaret said. Eleanor nodded. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind a dozen times. Termination, public dismissal, a severed career trajectory. Ihre Aufregung zu resigen, Margaret continued. Effectief immediately. You receive a professional neutral recommendation. No je dit realizing, tot. IT was merci, chor protestede. I understand, Eleanor said quietly. Margaret stood for a long moment. This isn't the end of your career, Eleanor. But IT is the end of this chapter. What you do next will matter more than anything you have done before. Eleanor stood, smoothing her blaze out of habit. Thank you for the opportunity, she said. The words sounded strong in her more gratitude instead of negotiation. By Friday, moving boxes lined her apartment walls. Framed words, conference plaques, carefully curated reminders of achievement were wrapped in paper, their shine muted. She realized how little of it meant anything to her now. The titles had not made her wise. The recognition had not made her perceptive. They had simply made her louder. The call came just after sunset. Neither Charles's name illuminated her screen. Her breath caught. For a moment, she considered letting Katie go to voicemail. Cowardice whispered that silence might be easier. But she answered. Hello, she said. Hello, Eleanor. Each's voice was the same measured, calm, unmistakable present. It made her chest ache in a way she hadn't expected. I heard about your resignation, Neither said. I wanted to reach out to. You didn't need to, she replied swiftly. I know you're not obligated to care about my professional call-up stuff. It's not about obligation. She closed her eyes. I'm so sorry, Eleanor said, the words finally unrestrained. If you try to write this apology 100 times. Nothing captures how deeply I regret what I said, how I treated you. You deserve that better. You deserve that to be seen to. There was a pause. She imagined him somewhere quiet, perhaps at a desk or closer, looking out a window, listening rather than preparing to speak. I know you're sorry, Neither said. The dam broke. I was obsessed with my own narrative. Eleanor continued. My ambition. My image. I turned you into a supporting character because it made me feel superior for too long. I never asked about your work because it already decided it didn't matter. That's the part I hate most. Her voice trembled. You gave me so many chances to actually see you. I ignored them. I'm not calling to make you feel worse, Neither said gently. Then why did you call? Because I don't see you as a villain. She let out a shaky breath. How can you say that? I humiliated you. I diminished you publicly. You did, he agreed, and I heard. But not for the reasons you think. Eleanor listened. Fully now. If you've been underestimated before, Neither continued. That's not new. What heard was that it came from someone I trusted. When you reduced me to figuring things out, you revealed something not about me, but about how you were seeing people. I know, she whispered. I don't think you're unequally terrible, he said. I think you fell into a common trap, valuing people based on their usefulness to your ambitions rather than their inherent worth. The words landed swiftly but permanently. The financial worth rewards that my debt, Neither did. But it makes relationships hollow. Is that why you stay private? Eleanor asked. Why you work through intermediaries? Partly, he said. My father built an empire. He destroyed every relationship in the process. When he did, his funeral was full of business associates and empty of friends. I decided early I wanted a different kind of wealth. The silence between them felt repetitive rather than awkward. That's why you didn't correct me, Eleanor said slowly. You wanted to see if I valued you or just what you could have. I wanted to see if curiosity would award to your assumption, Neither replied. If who I was would matter more than who you needed me to be. I failed, she said. Completely. You did, he acknowledged. But I believe people can learn. Eleanor saw a lot. What you're doing right now is called as kindness. It feels like the greatest comeback. You could destroy what's left of my reputation too. I could. Niet under greed. But the guarantee that doesn't require humility others. Real strength is responding to smallness with largeness. Tears slipped down Eleanor's cheeks. Thank you, she said. Forcing me as capable of growth even after I proved I hasn't seen you adult. Where will you go now? Neither asked. Small firm. Lord position, she replied. Hopefully somewhere I remember errors that every person has the put I haven't discovered yet. That sounds like a good start. They sat in silence, comfortable, honest. Nathan, Eleanor said quietly. That night at the gala, where did you come? You never liked those events. She heard the smile in Elia's voice. You asked me to, and despite everything, I cared about you. After they said goodbye, Eleanor sat alone, phone in hand, watching the city lights burn through tears. She had lost her title, her reputation, a relationship she hadn't valued properly. But she had gained something rarer. The understanding that the guarantee given freely when it could have been weaponized was worth more than any victory. The city did not pause for Eleanor 8 months reckoning. Outside her apartment window, Manhattan continued its relentless choreography traffic pulsing through avenues, office lights blinking on end of like a living organism, inhaling and exhaling ambition. Somewhere below, deals were being made, introductions carefully rehearsed, and assumptions quietly weaponized. The same word Eleanor had once mastered continued without her. But she was no longer moving through it the same way. The morning after Nate and Charles's call, Eleanor woke earlier than she had in years. There was no calendar demanding for attention, no email full of urgent escalations. The silence felt unsettling at first, like standing on a stage after the audience has left. Then, slowly, it became something else space. She broke off without checking her phone. She stood by the window and watched the city rather than measuring herself against it. For the first time in a long while, her thoughts weren't racing ahead to the next milestone. They stayed with her, uncomfortable but honest. She replayed Nathan's words again and again. Curiosity over assumption. Substance over spectacle. A different kind of world. Eleanor realized how often she had confused momentum with meaning. How many conversations she had entered already certain of what the other person represented to her trajectory. How rarely she had asked questions without an agenda attached. She had been rewarded for that my dad. Promoted because of IT. Applauded for it. And IT had ruled her out. 2 weeks later, Eleanor accepted a position at a that advised the firm's own office, no press release. The title was modest. The compensation, a fraction of what she once recommended. When former colleagues heard, some offered sympathy and revealed a superiority. Others offered nothing at all. She didn't correct the error. Her new office had frosted glass instead of sweeping views. The furniture was practical, unremarkable. But something surprising happened in that quieter space. People spoke more honestly. Junior associates asked questions without fear. Clients talked about long-term sustainability instead of quarterly updates. Decisions were slower, more deliberate. At first, Eleanor had to fight her instinct, the urge to dominate conversations, to frame people quickly, to measure value without listening. Each time she caught herself, she thought of Nathan standing calmly beside her in that penthouse, absorbing her words without protest, then leaving without spectacle, leaving with the guarantee. One afternoon, a junior analyst named Mark sat across from her desk, nervously presenting a proposal. Its delivery was uneven. A sweet ill-fitting. Eleanor felt the old reflex the mental categorization, the quiet dismissal. She stopped herself. Tell me why this matters to you, she said instead. Mark blinked, surprised. Then he spoke not about numberers, but about H.S. family, which is motivations, the kind of professional he hoped to become. Eleanor listened, truly listened. When he left, she sat back and exhaled. This, she realized, was the work she'd been writing all along. Months passed. The story of the gala faded into something else no longer a scandal, just an anecdote. New mistakes replaced all at once in the cheetah's endless cycle of ambition. Eleanor's name stopped circulating, and she was grateful for that anonymity. One evening, as a two men crept into the city, she attended a small industrial panel not as a featured speaker, but as an observer. The room was modest, the conversations unpolished, and yet the depth of discussion surpassed anything she'd heard in glittering ballrooms. As the panel wrapped up, she spotted Nathan Carlyle across the room. He hadn't seen her yet. He was speaking quietly with an older woman, hands relaxed to each sides, posture open. No entourage, no spotlight, just presence. Eleanor hesitated. The old Eleanor would have calculated the aptitudes of approaching him. The new Eleanor simply walked over. "Nathan," she said. He turned, surprise flickering briefly across his face before obtaining instant recognition. And they stood there, unhurried, unguarded. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said. "I prefer rooms where people aren't performing," he replied with a faint smile. She nodded. "I'm starting to understand why." They spoke for a few minutes about the panel, about work, about nothing particularly impressive. There was no tension, no unfinished business hanging between them. Just two people acknowledging a shared past and a transformed present. Before they parted, Eleanor said, "You changed the trajectory of my life too." Nathan considered this. "No," he said gently. "You did. I just stopped shielding you from the consequences too." She smiled, not in embarrassment this time, but in understanding. As she walked home that night, Eleanor felt lighter than she had in years. She hadn't reclaimed her old status. She hadn't rebuilt her reputation in the way she once would have divined success. But she had gained something infinitely rarer in the world she inhabited: perspective. She understood now that true power gender now owns itself. That dignity isn't proven by domination. That the most meaningful measure of success isn't how high you climbed, but how deeply you were willing to see. The city still glittered outside her window, but Eleanor Whitman no longer mistook the shine for substance. And in that quiet, recalibration in choosing curiosity over assumption, humility over spectacle, largeness over small niche, had found a world that no market could quantify and no ambition could ever take away.